Based at the Centre for Freshwater and Environmental Studies at Dundalk Institute of Technology, and we've just celebrated our 10-year anniversary in the centre. And over the course of those 10 years, the involvement of the centre in facilitating integrated catchment management and engaging communities has really grown very, very strongly. I'm going to be talking about some of the projects that we've been involved with most recently there, and Brian's given the game away a little bit earlier on with some of the work that I've been involved with the National Federation of Group Water Schemes. We're going to start off with talking about a bit of a magic of Leonardo da Vinci. He correctly stated that water is the driving force of all nature, not only because life cannot exist without water, but also because water has a strong role in shaping the land that we live in terms of the topography. And his study on this turbulent water system, I think, can maybe be used as a bit of a metaphor of how Irish water resources management has been over the last few years. It's been steadily managed in terms of a political view, and then in around 2014 it kind of fell off a cliff with the initiation of Irish Water, which created a great deal of turbulence in Irish water resources management. And certainly the Irish government has almost drowned within that turbulence over the last few years. But now, in terms of an engagement process, we're starting to come out into some more calmer waters. And at an international level, the United Nations have developed a few key goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, within which water underpins two key ones. Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation, and number 14, life below. But actually, water underpins every single one of these Sustainable Development Goals. With regards to the first one, no poverty. We can't increase food resources without water. Subsequently, hunger is dependent on water being delivered to increase that food. Good health, number 3. The delivery of clean water is imperative for good health. And educating people for goal number 4. Understanding where water comes from, understanding how clean water is produced is very important. And for number 5, gender equality may have a bit of a lesser influence here in Ireland, but in developing countries, it's the woman's role to frequently, every day, go out, collect water and bring it back to the family and use it for cooking and drinking. We're here today talking about goal number 7, renewable energy, and of course, water and hydro energy is a key component of that, and subsequently that links into goals number 8 and 9, good jobs and economic growth, innovation and infrastructure. You can't have good jobs and economic growth without dependency on water, and you need the innovation and the infrastructure to deliver that water to support those good jobs and economic growth. Goal number 10, reduced inequalities. That's all about access to clean water supplies, but also maintaining that gender balance. And subsequently, by moving towards sustainable cities and sustainable communities, why we're here today, why we're talking about water as being underpinning those sustainable communities. And skipping on to number 13, which is climate action. Areas of the world are under significant water stress. And with climate change into the future, those areas that are currently under stress are likely to be under further water stress into the future. And subsequently, knocking back into goal number 12, which is responsible consumption. We're all responsible for using our water resources in a sustainable manner. Goal number 15 is life on land. Life cannot exist without water. And goal number 16, peace and justice. Water is actually one of the underpinning reasons why a lot of conflict exists in the world. And then number 17, what I'm really going to be talking about today, is all about partnership to maintain and to achieve all of these goals. The integrated management of water to achieve sustainable communities. And I'm not normally one for putting up loads of text on the screen, and I'll read this out to you, not for those that aren't able to read it. But in terms of sustainable communities and what sustainable communities mean, this is from a publication by The Wheel last year in association with the Environmental Protection Agency here in Ireland. And they're defining what sustainable communities are. So a sustainable, livable, healthy community is not just reactive to certain events, such as flooding or economic recessions, but instead it's proactive and empowered to shape its own future for the health and well-being of all members of that community, as well as the environment. And a citation within that paper is that communities that engage citizens and institutions to develop sustainability principles and a collective vision for the future, and that apply an integrative approach to environmental, economic and social goals are generally likely to be more successful. So it's that triple bottom line of environmental, economic and social goals that are really the key to delivering sustainable communities, and water underpins each one of those. Now the challenge is to increase or change ways that people think with regards to water. Here in Ireland, we're very strong about thinking about our own immediate locality, the estate that we grew up in, the town that we're associated in. But moving with regards to water management from that local thinking to the wider scale issues is quite a significant challenge. And in terms of water resources management, it's the river catchment that is that geographical area of management, and changing that thinking process from my own locality into how I live and work within that river catchment geographic location is a key challenge in terms of improving water resources management. So let's just go back a little bit and talk about what a catchment is. So a river catchment is an area where water is collected by the natural landscape. So a drop of water falls on the land and it typically flows towards a certain point. And that certain point is usually the sea, but in some cases it can be a lake or another area. And we all live and work within those catchments. We use the land for farming, growing agriculture, we use the rivers for dumping our waste in, but also the water percolates down into the land, and that groundwater then flows. It can flow back up into rivers and lakes, but it can also flow back into the sea. We use groundwater for drinking water resources, and the way that we use the land can impact on the quality of that water, of course. And in terms of water resources management, at the moment, the Irish government is in the process of a public consultation period for river basin management planning. And those river basin management plans are to do with the Water Framework Directive. And if you're interested in how water is managed, both at a local and national scale, then I encourage you to partake in that engagement process. And within this second round of river basin management planning, the catchment is the geographical base for those plans. So here we have a map of Ireland and all the catchments that are outlined. The issue comes when we look at how our social areas are managed. These catchments cover multiple local authority jurisdictions, and so the management of the water within those catchments doesn't fit nicely as to how our social areas are managed. And here in Mayo we have 5 catchments across 4 different local authorities. So the key, in order to be able to manage water resources properly, is going to be significant stakeholder engagement across those local authorities, but also not only for the local authorities, but the people that live within those catchments as well. And so where do communities fit in with this? So the processes that I'm talking about here is what's known as integrated catchment management. And integrated catchment management is a top-down and a bottom-up process. It cannot work without either of those. So top-down, the government agencies are looking to facilitate management actions on the ground. Bottom-up processes, the communities want to be involved in that. So how can they become involved? There's a number of different ways. They can participate in public consultation, like I've discussed for the second round of river basin management planning. There are organisations being formed here in Ireland at the moment known as Rivers Trust, using the basis of a model that's been delivered in the UK for the last 20 to 30 years. Communities can participate in research funding calls, and they can develop community-led visions that can be then used to leverage funding to implement those visions and achieve those visions of what they want for their local water resources. And of course, they can participate in local land and water management actions. But currently, here in Ireland, there's no national framework for engaging communities. It's down to the individual project as to how they want to go about to engage those communities. And there's no framework for assessing the success of monitoring that engagement. It's not really acceptable just to be able to say, okay, we have 50 people turn up at a meeting, everything was fantastic. There's generally no assessment of knowledge transfer in these engagement processes. That needs to change. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about shared watershed landscape project that I was coordinating in association with Newry Moreland Down District Council in Armagh and the communities of Forkhill, communities of Forkhill, Cullyhanna and Mullaban in South Armagh in Northern Ireland. And this project brought those communities together to discuss their love of their local water resources. And one of the key aims of the project was to raise awareness of local water quality issues within their local catchments, but also to develop a community-led vision for their water resources in order to leverage further funding into the future. And that involves sharing ideas and seeing their local waters through other people's eyes, how other people use their local waters, but also empowering those local communities to make a difference. And that's really the key. We've heard the word empower quite a bit today. In order for communities to be empowered, when they are engaged, they need to see the results of that engagement, the results of their efforts. If they're not able to see that, then they're not going to be engaged in future programs. And as a result of engagement difficulties in the past here in Ireland, there are significant legacy issues where people have said, well, we tried to engage previously, but nothing happened. And I'm not really interested anymore. And for people that are coming in trying to change that, trying to get those engagement processes rolling again, that's a significant challenge to get over that, those engagement legacies. So why was the project developed? It was developed to help connect the local communities back with their local water resources, to embrace the past, to remember how things used to be in order to enhance the future. And so we work with the communities to raise awareness of local water quality issues and to talk about land management issues as well, because it's not just about water, it's about how the land is used as well. And we talked about issues of agriculture with cattle poaching, flooding issues, debris in rivers, bankside erosion, all of the kind of issues that have the potential to be improved through community involvement. And the project was rolled out across the community through several different events. We held community workshops where we discussed the project, we encouraged people to be involved in it. We engaged local artists to go into local schools, to work with the children to develop visual visions of how they want their water to be. The children are the future, so let's work with them to discuss how they want their waters to be used. We held talks about woodland planting, about flood risk, and we had communities out involved looking at the bugs that exist in their local waters to understand how the natural life that lives in their local waters that they may not be aware of and how they can be indicators of local water quality. We also worked with the UK River Restoration Centre, who came over to deliver training courses as to how local rivers can be improved to increase biodiversity, to reduce water quality incidences. And with regards to nutrient management, we had free soil testing available for local farmers who wanted to understand how their soil nutrient status was in order to change their nutrient management application and try and reduce the level of runoff entering local water resources. Now, importantly, the results of that soil testing didn't just send them back a number to say you had X amount of phosphorus in your soil. It gave the management implications of those numbers. So it helped the farmers to develop how they could use their land into the future. And as a result of all that work, we developed an overarching vision, which was that the communities want their waters to be clean and full of life, with access that's agreed by all, to enable learning and safe play, and to be the pride of the region. And I think everybody in this room can relate to that vision in one way or another. And the aim of that vision is to now move forward with the local governing agencies to work towards developing funding initiatives that can then be used to achieve that vision. And that vision was underpinned by 4 subvisions. And I'm not going to go into huge detail about it, but just to give the idea that those subvisions created the pathway as to how those funding initiatives could be met. We want better access along our river, to develop pathways, platforms and jetties, better off-road parking. But one aspect that was really key to a lot of local landowners was that access had to be agreed by all. There was significant concern about access being available to everybody, because if an accident happens, then there could be litigation implications. We want cleaner rivers and lakes, not just about reducing pollution, not just about litter going into the rivers and lakes, but to remove overgrown vegetation that can facilitate some of the rivers for recreation, to clean up existing walkways, and the development of a community or river lakes group that can achieve that. We want to educate children about rivers and water safety. Children were seen as having a missing link with their local waters because of an incident that had happened 20 or 30 years ago where unfortunately a child drowned in the local waters. And as a result, people were scared to let their children associate with the local water. So the community wanted to change that. They wanted to educate people about the rivers, to talk to them in the classroom, but take them out of the classroom as well, into the field, teaching children how to fish and trying to raise awareness on water safety in and around the rivers and lakes. And then finally, they wanted to help develop the local economy, to bring tourism to the lakes and rivers. They wanted to develop the tourism, the area is steeped in history and beauty, it's fantastic natural and cultural heritage there, but the waters weren't typically associated with that. So they wanted to encourage recreational activities such as angling and kayaking in the local area. And importantly, these 4 subdivisions fed and fitted really nicely with the local development plans, the biodiversity action plans. And so there was strong potential for funding to be leveraged into the future to try and make sure that this community-led vision can be achieved. But what was really important, and the feedback that we got from the community, was that they felt their voice was now being heard, and that they felt that they were in a position to really make a difference at the local level, in partnership with the governing agencies. And so now I'm going to move on and talk briefly about citizen science and using local communities, or local communities using their time and voluntary experience to understand water quality, to understand what's going on in their local catchments. Now, Brian has already talked about group water schemes and what they are, so I'm not going to talk too much about this, but just to note that the source water varies. It could be surface water, lakes and rivers, or it could be groundwater, and as a result, the pressures on those sources can vary. And subsequently, the treatment process is undertaken to ensure clean water can vary. And the other guys have also shown their favourite picture. This is my favourite picture and work that I've undertaken for the group water scheme sector. This is down in County Kerry, a very small group water scheme. I think they service less than 50 houses, and this is their water treatment centre. So when we imagine water treatment centres, facilities, we're thinking of great big systems. This is simply filtration and chlorination, which is then distributed along to the community. And Brian's talked about a lot of the work that's undertaken in terms of protecting those sources, to understand what's going on in river catchments area. And I'm going to talk about some of the work I did for a local scheme not far away from here on the Galway-Roscommon border. They extract their water from Loch Lum. So this is the loch, the green dot is their extraction point, and that's the river Suck flowing along just north of it. And they had some significant water quality issues. They were getting frequent algal blooms. They had some significant trihalomethane issues in their treated water, and they wanted to understand what was going on within their catchment. But first of all, they didn't know where all their water was coming from. So when we undertook this source protection report, one of the first things they said was, oh, we didn't know that part of the land was feeding into our drinking water source. And they were the people that are managing the area. Now that's not a criticism of them, it's just that their knowledge and awareness of where the water was coming from had never been described before. And now they had that boundary within which they could work. And as a result of some of the recommendations of this report, they went out and over the course of the year they undertook some water quality sampling to try and understand where the pressure points were within their catchment that were causing some of their water quality issues. And so they sampled at a number of points, and they actively went out and added a couple more points to this as well. And what they found was there were 3 key areas within their catchment there were issues. In these 2 areas, they were having microbial and nutrient issues, which suggested that there was nutrient management application going onto the land that has the potential to be improved. Or there was livestock access within those areas that could be improved. Livestock entering the watercourses and doing what livestock do. In this location, however, there was a different water quality issues. There was a lot of dissolved organic carbon, turbidity was high, nutrient levels were quite high. And what we found when we had a look, we went out and had a look in that area, there's a big cut over bog area upstream that was providing high carbon, high colour, high turbidity area, water qualities into that location. But also there was a commercial forestry there as well. And so now the local group water scheme are able to go out and engage with the landowners to say, well, this is having an impact on our drinking water. Are there management actions that we can help with that can help improve the water quality that you yourself are drinking? Now, with regards to citizen science, there are a lot of citizen science projects active throughout the world, but there can be issues with regards to the collation, interpretation and communication of data. Standardized methodologies have to be used. There needs to be quality control, as Brian's spoken about, to ensure that that data is as strong as it possibly can be. But with regards to data analysis, for a lot of the people that are out collecting them, they may not have the skill set to analyse it, to interpret it and to communicate it. So who does this in that situation? And quite often, these are outsourced. And then there are management implications. So once this data is being collected, how is it used to inform management actions? And is that data trusted by the relevant agencies that are going to use it? And from conversations that I've had with some people in Ireland, there is very little trust in citizen science collected data. And that needs to change. It's just because the citizens don't have the necessary qualifications doesn't mean that that data that they're collecting isn't of high standard. So, just to ram home how important it is for communities to be involved in local water management. I just took a survey about 18 months, or actually 2 years ago now, and it was just recently published in an online, freely accessible journal PLOS One, so please do have a look at it if you can. 81% of survey respondents said that they don't feel included in decisions regarding their water environment. And yet, 95% of respondents believe that local communities should have a say in how that water environment is managed. Now, the issue is that only 30% of people then said that they would be willing to be involved in local water management issues. So, we had the question on the floor earlier. How do we engage people to get involved in these kind of issues? Quite often, it's the same people being asked to do more and more each time, and it's a significant challenge and there's no easy solution. People can be involved in a number of different ways. It can be simple litter picking. It can be responding to public consultation documents. Going out and helping to remove invasive species. Being involved or having events run that involve all of the local communities. Or being involved in local water restoration issues so that those later projects are higher level with greater cost. But something that is really strong in Ireland is the Tidy Towns initiatives. And as you walked in today, when you registered, I don't know if you noticed, but there was a huge bank across the wall of all the Tidy Towns awards that Westport's won over the last little while. Westport is very, very strong in the Tidy Towns. And in Ireland, Tidy Towns is an enormously competitive initiative. And now there are 2 water-focused awards in it. The Irish Water Value Award aims to encourage communities to raise awareness around water conservation and water protection. And that's been going for at least the last year or 2. But then just recently added this year is the Water and Communities Award, which recognises communities that are taking positive steps towards raising awareness and showing appreciation of their local waters. And that's funded through the Local Water and Communities Office, which is a recently established organisation. There's also with Inland Fisheries and Waterways Ireland as well. So these 2 awards have the potential to engage an awful large number of people throughout Ireland. And it's a great step towards bringing communities along the water journey. But in order to get communities engaged, sometimes it just needs that initial conversation. And that's maybe what we can all do here today, is to have that conversation, say, how can we be involved? How can it happen? And that conversation is really important. I'm going to leave you now with a quote from W.C. Fields. I never drink water, that's the stuff that rusts pipes. Right. So thanks very much.